Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello, friends, and welcome into another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. It is Monday, April 19th, 2021 in the beautiful city of Chicago, and I hope each and every one of you had a wonderful weekend. On today's show, we have to talk about the dumpster fire that is the Chicago Cubs offense and a report that came out about one of the superstars potentially getting a contract extension. We got to talk about those details. Who was it? Did they sign it? And the fallout from all that. It should be a very interesting show, Cub fans. But before we get to all that, let's take care of some housekeeping notes. You can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Give us 5 stars and leave a comment on iTunes. That's at Mercado Airwaves. You can become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities that you could get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. And keep up to date with everything we're doing on the podcast network, from our pop culture show, from our true crime show, from our sister podcast, the Gone Missing Podcast, by following us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves.
You had Javy 0 for 1. Bryant at second, Jock at first. In the air, left field. That one on its way.
The vibes are not good, babe, when it comes to the team on the north side. They are broken. The offense is broken. It's been broken, and they are now embarrassing themselves on national TV. And on top of everything else, we got a report that came out just a few days ago from Buster Olney, the great Buster Olney of ESPN, about a contract extension that was offered to Javier Baez. This article is from NBC Chicago, and I wanted to hit on some of the things that they mentioned in this article. The Cubs are ready to pay shortstop Javy Baez entering last season. That's at least according to one report by ESPN's Buster Olney, who wrote Sunday the Cubs offered Baez an extension, quote, somewhere in the range of $180 million prior to the 2020 season. Javier Baez currently is 29 years old. The exact timing of that offer is unclear, but the Cubs and Baez were discussing an extension during the 2020 spring training prior to COVID-19 shutting down the sports world. Of course, Baez struggled after baseball returned at a shortened season last July, posting a 203, 238, and a 360 slash line in 59 games. He did win his first Gold Glove. Team president Jed Hoyer discussed extensions with Baez and other core players this spring. And Baez, who's set to hit free agency this offseason, said he's willing to negotiate during the regular season. He's part of a loaded free agent shortstop class with Carlos Correa, Trevor Story, and Corey Seager. Fernando Tatis Jr. and Francisco Lindor recently signed extensions worth over $300 million this spring. Baez, for what it's worth, said those deals help the other upcoming shortstop free agents. So let's go ahead and let's look at that. This is going to take some Cub fans aback, right? Especially after what the season was for Javy last season, and quite frankly, what is going on this season, which is just an atrocious campaign for Javier Baez. So, I mean, full disclosure, right? If you're a Cub fan, you love Javy Baez. He is beloved amongst fans and amongst baseball players. The dude has always been a nice guy. He's always hustled. He is fun to watch. But what's happening right now at the plate for Javier Baez is not just frustrating, it's unheard of. I want you to listen to this stat right here. Javier Baez has 27 strikeouts and 1 walk. That's 27 strikeouts to 1 walk. Look at these numbers for 2021 for Javi. He has a .4 WAR at 56 at-bats. He has 12 hits. He does have 4 home runs, but he's batting .214. He has 12 RBI, 5 stolen bases. But listen to this. His OBP, .267. His slugging, .464. His OPS, .731. 27 strikeouts, 1 walk. Horrible at-bats. It's not even like you could see that there's an adjustment here, a little tweak there, and he might get things right. You're watching one of the best hitters in baseball for a long time be broken. And it's this weird notion with Javi because everybody sees it. I'm a dum-dum, and I could tell you how you could just bat around Javy Baez, and he's going to get himself out. Why has he not been able to make the adjustments? And it's been an excuse after an excuse after an excuse when it comes to Javier Baez and his tendencies and his bad habits when it comes to his plate approach. And the only person who's ever really been able to help Javier Baez, have a little bit more control at the plate, be able to hit opposite field balls, be able to make smart contact instead of just trying to swing like a wild man and get the ball to the stands. Where's David Ross been in this? And we've talked about that. It's been the in-game coaching. It's been in-game video replay. It's been fans. It's been this. It's been that. There's always been an excuse that they've been given for Javier Baez. But at the end of the day, Javier Baez is the one that's going up there and making himself look bad. And what doesn't help then is you get this report of $180 million. And John Heyman actually later came on the next day, I believe, and mentioned that some reports are now saying it was about $150 million, which could have just been Javier's team kind of just counteract the first report. But we could kind of stop there for a second. Javier Baez, $180 million. Quite frankly, right now he hasn't earned that contract. This is a philosophical thing, and this isn't just about Javi. This is the entire thought process when it comes to something like this. I want Javier Baez to make his money. I want Chris Bryant to make his money, Anthony Rizzo. I want you to make your money. And especially when you've earned it and somebody wants to pay you for it. But right now, you can't. If you're doing what the Cubs are doing right now, and you're trying to be fiscally responsible, and you're trying to do a rebuild, and you want to do it correctly, Javier Baez is a wonderful piece to have on your roster. And don't cry poor for the Chicago Cubs. This is not what that is. This is more about responsible GMing if we were playing a video game, fantasy basketball, fantasy football, baseball, all that, right? I don't want to feel bad for the Ricketts. You can't pay people, especially a 29-year-old shortstop who has many more quality years left for past performances, though, at that level of a contract. It hurts your organization. It cripples your organization. Now, if Javier Baez was the Javier Baez of 2016 when he's co-MVP of the NLCS, helping the Chicago Cubs win a World Series, coming back and having an MVP-type season against Christian Yelich, going back and forth up until the last weeks of September, yeah, then you earn your money. If you're somebody like a Francisco Lindor or Fernando Tatis Jr., where you could build a franchise around you because you're consistent and the holes in your game are not pronounced and don't completely break your lineup if you're cold or if you're on a cold streak. They are not the same. And here's another way of looking at it. You look at the free agents that we're going to see come in at shortstop between Correa, Story, and Seager. Is Javi going to get paid more than them? I'm all for seeing a player bet on themselves. I root for it. I think that is amazing. Bet on yourself, make that money. Make them have to pay you. It's the thing we've always said about Lauri Markkanen. It's the most frustrating thing about Lauri Markkanen is this is your chance to get paid, and you're not stepping up, and you've had opportunities to do it. It is now the same thing with Javier Baez. And baseball, understandably, is not the same as basketball, where the impact is in your hands every single play, and it's not chance, and there isn't so many variables. But Javier Baez has a wonderful baseball IQ. And it's not being shown right now when you see him swing like a wild man at balls that are 16 inches off the plate. And then when he does make contact with a fastball, something that he would have crushed any other year, he can't do anything with it. As an organization, you have to now evaluate whether or not you could give him nearly $200 million. Luckily for Javier, we know how wonderful of a player he is. We know how dedicated he is to the game, and we know how smart he is. He needs to make the adjustments himself. David Ross needs to do something with the mentality, the psyche of Javier Baez. That is all this comes down to. It's not going to be a hitting coach that changes this. It's not going to be the Nico Horner coming up that changes this. Javier Baez needs to be the one that makes the adjustments. And I think he can do it. And I hope he does it so he gets paid. But now that we've seen kind of how this whole 2021 season campaign has gone, that their offense is completely broken garbage. This team is bad offensively. And I am willing to eat my words in September if this team is about to go to an October run. But right now in April, this team is bad. And we've seen even Javier have tough moments at shortstop this year. So if you're going to have a guy who is just going to be glove dependent, you need him to be, at the very least, not a hindrance to your offense. And it's not Javi's fault that this team isn't hitting with guys in scoring position. That's not his fault. But again, though, he's part of that problem. And that's been the thing about this lineup, from top to bottom, and that goes up to the front office and the ownership. But what frustrates me, and it's easier said than done, and I haven't been able to always succeed at it, right? But the idea when it's your chance to prove it, and it's your moment to say, okay, I'm going to bet on myself. You don't think I'm worth this? Well, let me show you. And you don't do it, and if you're at very least starting off slow, you don't make the adjustments, you don't show us the maturity it takes to handle something like that. Not when it comes to your conduct. I think he's handled the adversity pretty well. I'm talking about the adjustments in game. It worries me. It frustrates me because I then see Kris Bryant, who's taking full advantage of it. And come July, he will be on some other roster, making a playoff push, getting ready to get paid $300 million. Because Kris Bryant is healthy, he's made adjustments, and he's making contact. He's the only part of this offense that isn't broken. So we come to this point now where this team is rebuilding. They're not going to admit it. It's not like the NL Central is all that good, so this team is bad to begin with. And there's been a lot of weird baseball, right? The Atlanta Braves are having a tough start. The New York Yankees are having a tough start. Kansas City is good. So again, it's very early. It's only April 19th. I get it. But if we're just talking here on Sports from the Couch, right? Just you and I having a beer, philosophically speaking about what this team should do in the future. How do you judge paying Javier Baez at this moment? Do you talk about the fact that he struggled from last season? Okay, we give him the benefit of the doubt. It's the pandemic season. 60 games, no crowds, all the excuses. Okay, fair. Well, what about now? And he's been a part of this offense that's been broken for 3 years. Do you pay him because he was such a critical part of a World Series team? Well, then is that the case? Why didn't you pay Kyle Schwarber? Why didn't you pay John Lester? Why aren't you paying Anthony Rizzo? Why aren't you paying Kris Bryant? At the end of all of this, the one that has earned the contract, that has earned everything that he has said he wanted to this point has been Kris Bryant. It sucks that Javi is struggling this much because I do want to see him get paid. But if you're the Cubs right now, I do see the rock and a hard place that you're stuck in right now. And I think for most Cub fans, that just lives rent-free in their mind is how spectacular Javi can be. The moments where he does shine. Just how wonderful and special of a player he is. And we know it's all there. And he knows it's there. The problem has always been it's just never consistent enough. And that's why, personally, this is a tough one for me. Because I do want to see Javi in a Cubs uniform for years to come. But I see what's happening at the plate, how his approach is. And I'm trying not to be so judgmental, especially from this point of view. But just speaking on, when you're dealing with this much money, with this much talent, at this level, you can see why the Cubs might just be moving on completely from him. Or you can see why Cub fans are frustrated that he didn't sign that extension. But either way, I do think Javier Baez will steer the ship correctly. I do think he'll bounce back. He'll end up being around like that 260 batting average. I think his slash line will be nice. He'll have a bunch of home runs. But the real question ends up being, who do the Cubs want to invest into the future? Is it any of these guys? Is it Wilson Contreras? Are a bunch of these guys about to get new homes come trade deadline? They've had a bad start, and that doesn't help their case, but it's still early in the season. But I want to know what you think. You heard this report from Buster Only. The Chicago Cubs offer Javier Baez an extension, $180 million multi-year deal. Did you think he would have signed it if you heard that deal before? Do you think he's going to get to that $300 million range like some of these other cats like Fernando Tatis Jr. and Francisco Lindor? How do you think this plays out for Javier Baez and the Chicago Cubs? Let me know your thoughts all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. And that'll do it for us on this edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Don't forget, you can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Give us 5 stars and leave a comment on iTunes. That's at Mercado Airwaves. You can become a producer of the show at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves, the home to our interviews with athletes and celebrities that you can get ad-free and before anybody else. That's patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. And keep up to date with everything we're doing on the podcast network, from our pop culture show, from our true crime show, from our sister podcast, the Gone Missing Podcast, by following us on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy all the games, take care of yourself, take care of each other. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.